In the seminal classic, The Princess Bride, our favorite hero, Wesley, says, "Life is pain. Anyone who says differently is selling something." Welcome to WizNugs. Today we're talking about stress and how to handle it. Now, we can't possibly cover every way in which stress could be handled, but we've got a couple of really solid techniques we'd like to share with you. We're going to revisit some Stoic wisdom about how to deal with stress, and some more newfangled techniques for handling stress.
Stress in general comes from life. And when we talk about the Stoic approach to life in general, is that it's hard. And anything hard, usually, if not always, causes stress.
If you go through life expecting that you're never going to experience hard things, you're going to run through your life feeling like you're robbed. That you can't expect every meal to be perfect and every interaction with another human being to always be positive.
Or every day at work is going to be the best day ever.
Or that your children will just always be obedient.
And do exactly what you ask them to do every single time. I mean, I don't even have to ask them anymore. It's just done.
Now, the Stoics had a way of dealing with this by basically breaking down stressors or anxiety-ridden thoughts into two different buckets. We can call them the rational stress and the irrational stress. Now, in this case, rational refers to if there's an identifiable cause.
Like you just had a hard day at work, or the kids are acting up, or maybe the wife is, not understanding how bad of a day you had at work that day.
Right. There's a specific thing that you can point to. Right. Maybe your commute's bad. Yeah, all those things. So there's things that you can do about that. You can take action. Some of those things you can take action on. If your commute's really long, you might consider seeing if there's an option to telecommute, or maybe taking the train would alleviate some of your problems, because then you could, read a book or something during the ride.
Adjust your work schedule. See if you can come in a little bit earlier or a little bit later to avoid the traffic jam that happens every day at 8 o'clock.
Or maybe even finding a different job that's closer to home.
Right.
And there's different ways that we can structure our lives to handle and deal with some of these stressors to mitigate the worst effects.
But the point of it is that it's something that we can identify, and it's actionable.
Right. The second bucket, the irrational, is something where you don't have a specific thing you can point to, where you can say, I'm feeling stressed right now because I'm concerned about this upcoming event.
And some indicators could be like, I can't listen to you right now, or can everyone please be quiet? I need to focus. Or the smallest things in the room just set you off, and you're like, I've never noticed that squeaky door before, right? It's just you start noticing that your tolerance for things becomes thinner and thinner, and you can't pinpoint why.
Or even generalized anxiety, just feeling anxious without knowing any of those things. Right. So we end up with, how do we deal with that? Well, the Stoics would say, in a certain sense, deal with it. Bear it.
Bear what you can bear.
We've already covered in previous episodes some really helpful, really basic things we can do to help deal with stress. And those are, I like to call them the 4 walls, borrowing from some terminology from Dave Ramsey.
And so what are they again?
So the 4 basic things to do when you're feeling stressed out, or if you have this general anxiety going on, is exercise, water, sleep, and sunshine.
What about eating? Because I think, like we talked about before, sometimes we're hangry, right? So there's that recognition of it too. And I agree, those are the 4 things for sure. But it could be you're hungry.
Absolutely true. I don't want to think about stress eating.
I think of more of it as you're maybe on edge because you are hungry, and you've been putting it off because you're at work, or you're dealing with the kids, or you're at some event and you just haven't had the time yet. And you're waiting for that moment, but the tolerance and the stress is getting to you. And it's not so much of a stress eating like I need to eat in order to feel better. It's I need to eat because I haven't eaten, and I'm getting less tolerant of people.
Sure. So we might put food and water together. As
Sure.
If you're dehydrated, drink water. If you haven't eaten, make sure that you're eating.
Yeah, same category.
Low blood sugar can get you.
And I know as a diabetic that when I have low blood sugar, I am a jerk. Believe it or not, it happens. My wife will attest to it.
So if you're doing these basic things and you still have some thoughts that you just want to leave, one important exercise that comes from modern psychology is picturing the thought as being a thing separate from you.
If I recall correctly, it was the idea that your thoughts are not you, your feelings are not you. You have thoughts and you have feelings, but they're not definitive of who you are.
Yeah, it's really easy to get kind of caught up in this idea that because a thought came into my mind, that must mean that that's true for me in some sense.
Right.
And it's not really the case. I can say, "Gosh, I hate that person." Well, wait a minute. No, I don't really hate that. If upon further examination, I don't really hate that person. I am frustrated with the situation that we interacted in.
Right.
In other circumstances, we might get along great. But in this particular case, it didn't go well.
Right.
So this kind of goes along with the opinion versus fact, but way back in episode 1.
Right.
That there's different ways of conceiving of the world depending on what state of mind you're in and whether you're thinking about, is that an objective fact or is that just kind of my opinion on it right now?
And it's hard sometimes to know what the difference is because when you're in the moment and it does become heated, for lack of a better term, you're in that emotional state at some level. And being able to step back and do that analysis of, okay, am I really this upset with the person? Am I really this frustrated with the situation? Or is there something else going on? But I'm in it at the moment, and therefore I really don't have the opportunity to make that kind of analysis.
Similarly, if you're in a depressed state, that it's really easy to think that this is just how I am.
Yeah.
But really, it's a set of feelings and thoughts over time that really gets you in that spot. And continuing in that paradigm will keep you in that space. But by recognizing that I am not my thoughts, I can separate regular Casey from depressed Casey. And I can say, oh, that's a behavior of depressed Casey. That's not me.
Right. So once you got the thought or the emotion in the bubble, what do you do with it then?
Once you can picture it in any number of ways, but if you picture this, it's a nice harmless bubble.
Okay.
You know, the kind of bubble that a little kid would blow. The bubble comes out, and then you just have this thing, and it's all shiny, and it's not. You can hold this, and you can examine it, and you can say, okay, this is the thought. One thing you can do is you can say, is this even true? Or is this just how I feel right now?
Right.
You can examine it, and you can interrogate the thought once you view it as being something separate from yourself. But sometimes you just want to just let it go. Just picture it just floating away.
And then that's it. It's gone.
And it just floats off into the distance and pops. Now, does that change something in the real world? Not really. But can it change it in your mind? Absolutely.
I think it lends itself to the idea that feelings aren't forever and thoughts aren't either. And it might be prevalent at the moment. But if you can say, okay, wait, this is how I feel at the moment, but this isn't me and this isn't who I am, and this particular thought or emotion is just like this bubble. I'm going to let it go, and it's going to pop, and it's going to be gone.
Or even just choosing that this isn't how I want to be.
Right.
Right? You got a stressful situation at work going on, and things are changing, and it's tough.
Yep.
You can stop and you can step back and you can say, you know what? I'm choosing now to behave differently about this.
Yep.
You can go in and face this as a challenge, just the same way that you would preparing for hiking up a mountain, that you can do it. It's going to take effort. It's going to take work, but lots of things take work.
And we talked about this before. We talked about the book, Who Moved My Cheese? And change happens. Just like life is hard, change happens. And so trying to have a more healthy outlook upon it and how to deal with it, it's going to be very stress relieving. Knowing that it's going to be something, again, you can't control. But what I can control is how I respond to it. Now, do I want to go down the path of being, combative and angry and not being willing to go along with the new way of doing things? Or do I want to be like, okay, it's not ideal. This is not what I wanted. However, I'm adaptable. And I know that I can control myself. And I know that what is being asked of me is not impossible. So, what can I do to change my outlook, my view, my habits, my behaviors to accommodate this particular thing, at least until it gets to the point that I can no longer bear it?
Some of this comes down to writing it down is a powerful way, whether that's in a journal or writing a letter to yourself or even writing a letter to your boss. And then, don't send it if you don't
Right.
Think about that long and hard before you actually show it to anybody, but just getting your thoughts out can be very, very powerful.
I mean, maybe you show it to your accountability buddy and say, hey, what do you think about this? Yeah, you should probably burn that.
Or your therapist.
Or your therapist, right? Somebody who's going to be there on your side, understands,
Right.
or at least can sympathize to a point.
And can walk you through some healthy ways of dealing with the challenge.
Right.
Specifically, there's another concept here of, instead of just imagining it as a bubble, you could actually write down a thing that's stressing you out on a piece of paper, and then in a safe and controlled manner, burn that paper and just watch it literally go up in smoke.
Yep.
And there's something cathartic about just releasing it. And it's all symbolic, ultimately, of letting it go. That you can breathe in, you can breathe out. And it's a new moment, and new feelings come, and new thoughts come.
And every event that happens to you, and I've said this several times, and I use it with my children a lot, tempers you to become a stronger version of yourself so that you can face the challenges that are going to be coming up after this. If you can temper yourself with this particular thing that you're dealing with and become a stronger, better version of yourself, that means the next time that something similar comes along, or maybe even a little bit more challenging, you've already tempered yourself to be able to handle it and to deal with it.
This is a positive affirmation that we taught our kids was, I'm me, and I'm strong, and I can do hard things.
Yeah. And it's important to know that. And it, as cheesy or corny as it may come off, I think it's very important to realize that we are capable as individuals of doing things that are fantastic. But we have a habit of telling ourselves, no, that's too hard. No, I'm not good enough. No.
The voice in the back of our head has been tuned over many years and many interactions, and we don't always control what it says to us.
Yeah, especially when we're stressed. When we're in that stress moment, those negative thoughts are going to be in the forefront because I knew it. I knew that now they've realized that I'm not good, and now I'm going to be called out for being terrible at work, but that's not true. Again, your feelings and your thoughts are not you, and like you said, it may not even be true. It's just the feeling that you had at the time.
Yep. So I guess to sum up, we could say categorize your stress into one of those two buckets. Either it has an identifiable cause or it doesn't. And if it does, see if you can take action on it, or if that's a challenge that you can face up to, that you can grow and you can improve. On the other hand, if it's a challenge that doesn't have a direct cause that you can point to, practice those other things. Recognize in yourself, are you doing the four walls?
So on a tangent, I want to bring up briefly that we started selling, if you see in last week's episode, you saw that I was wearing the WizNugs t-shirt. Casey and I have started to sell t-shirts in order to upgrade the equipment. Well, we want to try to get some better lighting, maybe get some acoustical soundboard stuff in here so that we can reduce the echoing and whatnot in the videos. So if you like the show and you would like to support us, we're going to have a link in the video description to the t-shirt company. I believe it's Teespring. Is that right? And if there's anything in there that you like, whether it's a coffee mug or a t-shirt or some other item, all of it's going to go to making the show better.
We'll put a link to the Buy Me a Coffee.
Yes. Our show is also streaming on any platform where you can stream podcasts. So if you can't catch the live show, please tune in via streaming, whether it's in the car or you're on your jog, you're on your workout, and give us a listen.
And if you feel that we've provided some value to you, please consider subscribe, like, share with your friends.
And this has been WizNugs, and thanks again for tuning in. See you next time.
Thanks for joining us today on WizNugs. If you liked what you heard, spread the word. For more information, head over to mywiznugs.com.